Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast episode. Today, we're talking through Chapter 1 of Untangling the Golden Knot, which is about the balancing act that exists in retirement, where we have certain activities that can drain us, drain our time and our energy, and other ones that are recharging to us from an energy perspective. Obviously, you can't recharge time. You can't get time back that you've already spent, but you can make choices about where your energy is getting expended and where is it getting recharged. Some people will find gardening very recharging. Other people will find it as a chore that they don't want to do. So this is very individually based. What we're going to do today is walk through two different ways of doing the exercise at the end of Chapter 1. And that way we can start to explore how energy is expended in retirement and how we can recharge that energy, because we want to achieve a type of equilibrium. I want to talk about the word balance for a second. Sometimes that can imply that there's an equal amount of work and relaxation, or you're trying to kind of do a certain amount of, 4 hours is spent working, 2 hours is spent relaxing. So I got another 2 hours left to equal everything out. That's not how it works. It's really more about the energy we spend, but also looking at, are there certain things that are time consuming and may not drain energy in a very rapid way, but do it slowly. So it's kind of like a very slow energy sap. It's kind of like if your cell phone is just you're not using it, but the battery kind of runs out. And are there things like that we're doing that maybe we should focus on either having someone else do for us, doing with someone else, or incorporating those activities into social interaction and other ways that we can have almost like a recharging to it to equal those things out. So those are the things we're going to explore today. So if you're looking along in the book on page 10, it lists the different facets of life or different areas of life that people will typically spend their time and energy on during retirement. And this gives us at least a structure to work with. Sometimes if one of the biggest fears of retirement is, what am I going to do with myself? Is it going to be valuable? Will I lose my purpose? All those kinds of thoughts come to someone's mind that makes retirement seem like a big, daunting task that you have to fill all this time and know what to do with years and years of life, now that retirement has become a much longer span than it used to be. If we think about when Social Security was first put in place during FDR's administration, the anticipated lifespan was that somebody would be on Social Security for maybe 2 or 3 years, and that was it. And now we anticipate sometimes multiple decades of retirement for folks that are healthy, and that's a long time to fill, right? A long time to think about, what are we doing with ourselves? So let's talk together about what we want to do in these different facets. So on page 10 of the book, we have health and well-being, human connection, which includes family, friends, and community, our home, inner growth. For some people, that's spirituality. For some people, it's becoming a better person, or sometimes it's related to learning and being a continual learner. A lot of people will think about it that way. Fun and relaxation and recharging, our finances, working and volunteering, and then experiences. A lot of people will have like bucket list items or things that they want to do. So we're going to talk through those, and I'm going to share my screen and walk you through how I would answer some of these. And I'll also sprinkle in some ways other clients have answered these. So I'm going to share my screen here. And that way I can start to show you the actual exercise. It's really important that writing some of this stuff down and not just keeping it in your head. And I also think it's really important to share it with somebody that you care about and is involved in your retirement, whether it's friends, family members, your spouse, a significant other, children. Sharing this and building community around a healthy life and how you're going to untangle your golden knot is really important. So I'm going to do it according to the steps of the book first, and then I'll show you a different method that we'll use sometimes live in appointments with clients that can kind of is a little more open architecture and is more for clients that can be narrative and discuss it. And it's fun to do in person that way. We'll do the written method first. You'll notice my handwriting is atrocious. Hasn't gotten better since I first learned to write. And a lot of people say my handwriting's like a doctor's, but I think that is an insult to doctors because my handwriting is very illegible. but I think you'll get the gist of it. So health and well-being, right? So what does health and well-being mean to me? For one, that's going to be, what we're going to do is talk about just, first we're going to start with how much time and energy am I putting towards this right now? We're not evaluating whether that's good or bad. We're just saying, how much time and energy are we putting towards it right now? So I'm just going to give it a number on a scale of 1 to 10. You can do it that way if you want to, or you can just say high, medium, or low. I'm going to say my health and well-being, I'm going to put that as a 6 right now. Okay. There are certain things I want to focus a little more on, my diet and exercise, and there are some follow-up medical appointments I need to do. So that's what I'm thinking about. Okay. So number 2, you have community. Okay. So that's who the people around me that I'm involved with. And community also involves some kind of structure often. So it's going to be a circle of people in a friend group. So for us, we're pretty active in a church group, but that's going to change for us because we're moving locations right now. So we're going to go from New York down to Georgia. So I got to reestablish some of that community around us. And for us, a lot of our community is with family. I know it's another point for later, but we're going to we kind of have that as a big part of our community because some people live closer or further from family. So community is, I'd say that's probably at how much time and energy towards it? I'm saying that's probably a 5 right now. Okay. And then number 3, we're doing, okay, let's talk family. I jumped the gun on family. For us, that's a lot of what our community is. You'll find that some of these categories overlap, and they're kind of supposed to, because we often think of life as distinct pieces, but it's more like an ecosystem of parts that work together. Or if you're thinking of facets like on a diamond, the light hits the diamond and gets refracted. It's supposed to bounce between the different facets. It's not just supposed to go into one facet and just either stay in or only go out one. The brilliance of a diamond is because there's multiple facets involved usually. So similarly in life, a lot of these facets need to kind of work together and overlap and involve each other. So family, I have my dad that lives in New York. I got some brothers that live in New York and PA. And notice that I'm writing some things that are in my head. You don't have to just put a number to it, because sometimes putting some context around it is part of the exercise. My sister lives in Germany. And then I have my wife's family. Right? So for them, that's a lot. I say we put 7. There's a lot of involvement in our kids, right? Kids are about to graduate from high school, do the college and life transition stuff. It's a pretty exciting time for us. So, all right, let's talk about our home. Home is always a big focus for us. We enjoy spending a lot of time at home. We like to go out as well, but a lot of our time is spent at home, and we like to put a reasonable amount of effort towards making it an enjoyable place to be and also host other people. So hosting is important. Right. And having a relaxing environment is important. So that's like probably a 10 for us. That's one of our biggest focuses. All right. 5 is inner growth. All right. And for some people, they might be like, I don't know what that means. For me, this is thinking about how can I be, right? What does it mean to be a good person? Does that matter, right? How do I interact with the world around me? Do I leave the world a better place than than when I joined it? Those are the things that I think through when I think about inner growth. How can I live out my Christian values? And I don't mean inflicting my values on other people, but for me, that means if someone were to say that person's a Christian, my life is congruous with what people would associate with Christianity, which is usually being a loving and caring person. And I think it's really important to bring order out of chaos. Right? A lot of life around us can be chaos, but I feel like it's our responsibility as humans to live out bringing order to chaos and creating beauty and thriving in the world. And that, for me, that's inner growth. How can I continuously do that? This is probably a 5 level for me right now. All right. And now let's do 7 is leisure. Okay. What do I like to do for fun? I like to cook. I do music. I train dogs. And I do some woodworking. Okay. Those are my leisure things. Probably a 6 on these. And I'm going to move the screen around so we have some more room to write. If you want to pause the video, you can start working on this for yourself as well, or skip ahead if you don't want to know too much about what Chris thinks. But this is just kind of how you think through the exercise. So we're almost done. We're on point 7, which is leisure, and then we're going to learning. For learning, I'm doing a mentorship with a dog trainer. And I also got some new cookbooks. So I'm going to try some more techniques and stuff. Those are my 2 main learning things right now. And that's an 8. A lot of focus on that. And then finances. We have a lot going on in the finances. We got kids' college. I have a son with autism, and he's doing a life transition program, which is teaching life skills for independence. So we got to pay for that. We're going to make sure our commercial building that we have is fully renovated. So we've been working on that. So that's a big financial impact. And then we got to keep saving for the future. And that's a big focus. I run a couple different LLCs and businesses, so I got to focus a lot on that. So that takes a lot of time and effort for me. That's probably a 9 to 10. Some of that is wrapped up with work because I work in finance, right? So, and then that leads us right to point 10, which is work. There we go. And then I have 3 LLCs that I run. One is for tax advice and business consulting. Then we have the financial planning practice and investment management practice. And then I have my commercial property. So how much time do I spend doing work and also volunteering? I was doing a lot of a pretty reasonable amount of volunteering for music stuff that I do. So I want to continue to do that. This is a 10. It takes a lot of time and energy for me, but I really enjoy it. And I got a lot of recharge from that. I probably recharge a lot more from work than most people do. And then 11 is major events. What's going on in our life? We're moving. And we got kids in transition. That's a 10. That's more like a 12. This is off the scale, a lot of our focus right now. So you can see I just put numbers to each. You can see some of them are low, some are high. We're not judging what the scale is. We're just saying that's how much time and effort I'm putting towards this right now. So then the next step 2 in the book, that's on page 13, is are there any life categories where you need to adjust the time and energy that you allocate to them, jot down some ideas. So what I'm going to do is look at what I wrote, just the little notes here and there, and see what the numbers are. And are there numbers where I'd like to tweak what I'm doing? So I'm just going to put a little arrow up or down next to mine and maybe write down a couple of ideas. So let's see, I got to zoom out a little bit so we can see what I wrote before. There we go. I want health and well-being to be a bigger focus for me as we are finishing up some of these transitions. So I want that one to go up. And I think that's going to be daily exercise is really important, and tweaking my diet. Okay. And we're talking general ideas, right? We don't have to necessarily have everything planned out to the T. It's okay to have just general ideas for now. Community, we're going to be doing a reset on this. So this is going to go up. Family is going to shift to where we're spending more time with my New York family because we're in New York. Now we're going to go down to my wife's family. So that's going to be a bit of a lateral change, I'd say, switching. And then our home, that's going to stay about the same. Inner growth is going to stay the same for now. I'd like to tweak some of that, but don't have the capacity for it. As you can see, I have a bunch of categories I'm trying to push the envelope on. And how would I do it? We want to build community, right? That's going to take time putting ourselves out there. I'm an introvert, so it's more draining for me to be involved in social events, but I have to do it. That's how you build community. So I need to focus on that and also know that somewhere else is going to have to give probably to keep equilibrium for me. My leisure, cooking, dogs, and all that stuff is probably going to stay about the same. My learning, this is probably going to be I'm going to try to include in my learning, my dog training, get in touch with some local dog trainers and other training groups. There's some dog walking groups where people get together and everybody walks their dogs together to make sure all the dogs are well behaved, even in high distraction environments, right? So I'm going to try to include some community with the dog training, right? So I'm going to try to link those two. And then also with cooking, I'm going to do that with family and community, invite some people over. So that way I can kind of keep this the same, but also link the two. And that way I can maintain equilibrium. So that's how I'm thinking about it. This isn't like a math equation where it's energy in, energy out. You just got to know yourself and say, okay, this is a more draining activity, or this is a recharging activity for me. And then try to link things together. And we'll see later in the book, it's called Activity Gold, where you're looking for those golden nuggets that are really valuable things to you that touch on multiple facets at once. That helps bring everything together without you feeling like you're frazzled and pulled in too many directions at once. Finances, this is going to decrease for me in that a lot of these life transitions and getting things, the building will be renovated, the kids will be in college, all of that will be on a steady state. So this is going to go down as a focus. Work is going to go down as a focus because we just brought on a new employee, but he's been with us almost a year now. So the demands of that are going to decrease in some ways, I think, which is really good. And as he's fully up to speed, he'll be able to handle more client load. So that's really important for us. And then these life events with the kids moving, and then the kids getting transitioned, that's going to decrease a lot. And then we're going to try to go to a steady state for a little while and not make too many changes. So these are the things that we're thinking about changing. And you see, some of these don't require action. Some of them are going to naturally resolve. Other ones are going to require some concerted effort, like rebuilding community down in Georgia, continuing the learning, and kind of linking those two items. So I hope that's helpful in the first two steps. So let's keep going on step 3. And the step 3 is make a list of activities that make up most of your time. How do you feel when you're doing them? And can you focus on it when you're doing it? Can you bring your whole self? How do you feel when you're done? So I kind of talked about these. A lot of what I do is already in this list. And for you, you may have some other activities you're doing, like you may be, might volunteer for your HOA, let's say, and you're on the board. And you're like, man, that takes a lot of time. But I feel really drained when I'm done with it. So that might be something to focus on, where you say, hey, I might not want to be doing this anymore when my term's up. I'm going to step back for one term, and then I'll go back onto the board when I'm recharged and ready to contribute to the community again. So that's what step 3 is about. A lot of mine is already up here on the board, so I won't add to that. And then let's go to step 4, which is working from the list in question 1. Are there certain people or activities in your life who leave you feeling exhausted or recharged and electrified, how would you feel, or how would you plan your schedule around things that are energy sinks, right, that reduce your energy, and energy givers, so that you can counterbalance one and the other? So how I talk through that, I kind of did it as we went, but I'm saying, I want to focus a lot on this learning and building community. So those are going to be energy givers, but also energy sinks at the same time, and trying to balancing it out. So I want to make a concerted effort to once a week have people over for cooking out. We like to have I got a pizza oven outdoors. I like to grill. I like to smoke meat, all that stuff. So I want to have people over as we're doing that. And that's the stuff I'm thinking through, and you can think through as well, that when you look down your list, how would you like to adjust your schedule? We'll get a little more in future chapters about how you can organize this a little more, put some structure around it. Some people find the lack of structure in retirement very disconcerting. Other people find that having a very open architecture is relieving, because they've been in such a structured environment with work their whole life that it is now freeing. So we got to balance some of what's your personality type? Do you prefer more structure? Does it help to have written on the calendar what you're doing that day? Or do you like having really open days and just choosing, what do I feel like doing today? And then you go and do it. The downside to being more spontaneous is sometimes you can just spend a lot of time doing things that are either energy drains or just don't really, are not particularly productive. I have a lot of clients that say, I don't know where the time went. That isn't necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes you can fill your calendar with a lot of busyness that isn't recharging. And there's things like medical appointments and a lot of like mundane things. And if you do a lot of that, retirement can get a little bit boring and be like a grind, especially if you're going from a high work pace environment to that. So sometimes we have to say, okay, you need to sprinkle in a week, just seeing what's going on this week. Let's put a little structure around it and say, okay, you need to put some events in here where you're going to have social interaction, you're going to recharge from this. And it's interesting because just like the human body, you need bones to live, right? If you have osteoporosis, that's a issue where your bones are brittle and they're broken. You have an issue with the structure, but you also need to be flexible, right? Flexibility and strength are really important. So you have to have both in there. And some people are naturally have better bone structure, I'd say, where they don't need the extra support of like a written schedule. Other people like me, we need a written schedule, right? So that's going to be more like a brace that I have to wear to give me structure, because if I don't have structure, I tend to get a little lost. So hopefully this is a really good first dive into how would you do the exercise in chapter 1 that's on pages 12 through 14 to start to think about what you would do with your time and energy in retirement. I'm going to also show you a second way of doing this, and I'm going to clear my whiteboard now because this is really helpful for some folks that might find this a little overwhelming, especially if you're overwhelmed by the thought of retirement. We're going to try this other way that might be a little simpler for you. And we're going to use the acronym PATH, P-A-T-H. And see where the path takes us. This is a little more open architecture, right? Where you can kind of answer how you want to. So remember, the thought of this is what's going on in life now and what do I see going forward and how would I like it to be? So what we want to do is talk about P, which is people. And this is going to be family, friends, and community. And why do I keep harping on people? Because the number one indicator of happiness in retirement is social connection, even if you're an introvert. So building that social connection, it doesn't have to be an inordinate amount if you're an introvert, is really important. You just have to have the right amount, right? And the right kind of people that are where you can expend energy with them, but also get recharged by being with them. So who are the people that are important? And then you'd say, look, I'm going to use a client example. A lot of them will bring up grandkids, right? And they say, okay, my grandkids are at a certain age where I can watch them and hang out with them and they're at a fun age. I want to be around them, right? So this starts to think ahead. Okay, grandkids are important. Then my next question would be, well, where are your grandkids? Are they local, or do you have to travel to see them? So you're going to start to see, when we're thinking about retirement, where your family is located influences a lot of things. And also your retirement travel budget is often going to be driven by where family and friends are and social connection. Sometimes people will say, well, I want to move to a state that has lower taxes, right? Or is more retiree friendly. But they don't realize that there's no social connection there, and they will have to make a concerted effort to reestablish that in a new location. So I see a lot of clients moving to where grandkids are, but sometimes kids move, right? And they might move to a location where you don't want to move for work. So there is the idea that you might just stay in one place throughout retirement probably isn't going to be the case. Often people will do one move, maybe two in retirement. So just be flexible with that. And it's very often driven by family and particularly grandkids. Also, remember, grandkids grow up and they go to college, and they can't hang out with grandma and grandpa when they are in college, right? Because they're doing college. They're moving on with life. And you have a key window where you can influence them and be a key part of their life. And then there's a time at which they start to mature and become adults, and that may shift. So thinking about it in phases can also be super helpful, where you have like saying, okay, ages 3, 4, 5, we're really involved with the kids, but now they're starting to go to school. So now I'm going to like activities or start hockey or dance or other things that kids will start to do. And then you're going to be very involved in seeing those and spending time with them. A lot of grandparents get a lot of satisfaction out of doing that when they're retired. So community, some people used to have it at work, and they may say, oh, that's going away. Now what am I going to do? And that's a big question mark. And you can leave it as a question mark now, or you could start to say, well, where do I think I could do it? What are my hobbies? A lot of men in particular tend to form social groups around activities. And women tend to be more flexible, where they can do it around activities or just plain social connection, meeting and talking to people. American men in particular don't seem to be as flexible, and it needs to be often around an activity. And that's where volunteer work stuff can be very important. So that way you're not isolated and have a new bridge to social connection, particularly for males. Females just tend to be better at it. It's a generalization, but it's statistically been shown to be generally the case. All right, so I'm going to try some, let's say this client says, I'm going to try some volunteer work. And then I'd ask them, well, what do you want to volunteer? What are you interested in? And they might say, oh, I like to walk dogs at the shelter. I've always wanted to, make sure the puppies get out of the kennels before they're adopted, right? Or become more used to working with people so they'll be adoptable. That's what I used to do for a number of years as a hobby, right? So volunteering through that, we have clients that'll volunteer at a food pantry, food bank, other things like that, church volunteering, civic organizations, Rotary Club, things like that people will do, right? So this client is thinking, all right, who are the people? I had a big social circle around work. Is that all going to go away? My next question would be, well, how can you continue some of those friendships? Are there things outside of work that you could do with those friends to continue that, and just so that way you're taking an already successful relationship and transitioning it into a new phase of life? All right, so we're going to talk. So this is just an example of people, right? You see how this might be a little simpler. There's different categories is sometimes jumping around too much. This is more thematic. And if you want to do this with someone, you just ask, all right, who are the people that are important to you? Who do you care about? And who do you enjoy being around? Just ask that question, let the person talk, and ask them more questions about it. This is really good if you're doing this with a partner and a loved one. And the answers you may get may not be satisfactory to you. That's okay. That's not the objective. The objective is to just hear what the other person's thinking and let them express it and see how their social interaction with people is formed. How do they see it going forward? And then if you see it's very different than your spouse, you can either work in a concerted way to work together and do some social things, or you can keep separate friends. That's fine. But often having overlapping friends can be very helpful. And if you have none, then you might say, okay, we're going to find some people that like things that we both like and start to build social connection that way. And that way you're connecting as a couple, but also with other people. And that way your social circle doesn't solely revolve around your spouse. This can be very dangerous, but also sad, because people die eventually. And if your spouse dies and your social circle is around your spouse, and that spouse is the only social connection to your social circles, it can be very difficult to where you're losing your spouse and you're losing your social circle at the same time. So for those of us who are more introverted and their spouse is more extroverted, like in my family, my wife is often the organizer of social events. I need to make some concerted effort to build social connection outside of her. And it's not to be independent and say, oh, I'm planning for her to be dead. That's not what it's about. It's to develop deeper social connections in multiple ways. And that way, if one of these social connections tends to fall out, we have some other things already in place to help bridge during a difficult time. Next, we're going to talk about activity. So this is going to be volunteering, work, leisure, hobbies. And then we have like the mundane stuff. Like, I'm going to mow my grass, or will I, right? So those kinds of things that we do. What are we going to spend our time doing? If we were to wave a magic wand and retirement's going really well, what do we think we'd be doing with our time? And some people would say I'd do, like in my case, I'd be doing woodworking. I'd be training some dogs or helping homeowners build a good relationship with their dog and live in a good harmonious relationship with their dog in their house, and not have a chaotic dog, or dogs that are too afraid to interact with friends, or friends don't want to come over because your dog's crazy, right? So dealing with those kinds of things is what I'd spend some of my time doing, right? So starting to talk through those things, and also like, hey, we have medical issues. How much time is spent doing that? What are the other activities, and how can we sprinkle in between those things important other items to get some variety? Because variety tends to be and novelty tends to be very recharging for humans. We like new and novel things. And that's one of the reasons why I think hobbies like woodworking, you're creating a new project. You're still doing an old thing, but it's with a new project. And that novelty tends to be very helpful when you're doing dog training, right? It's a new dog or a new owner dog team that you're working with, and you can get some novelty out of that. So the novelty of the activity, while still being comfortable enough to engage in the activity, is also important. If you do all new activities at once, it can be emotionally draining and frustrating. So trying too many new activities at once can be challenging for clients when they have a lot of time and they're just trying all kinds of things and they're not good at any of it. When you're not good at anything, it makes you feel frustrated, right? So taking something that you are good at, pivoting to it, these are the kinds of things that a lot of people find super helpful. So let's say this particular client, they like to golf. I don't really know anything about golf. And I know a lot of people get really into it. I've tried putting a couple times and hitting balls, and it didn't really appeal to me. But I think what I have to do is go golfing with somebody that really loves it, and then I probably could pick it up. So, and the reason why I bring that up is you might have a hobby that you already do, and you might say things, well, I don't like that. A friend of mine once said, well, if you don't like something that a lot of people like, you should do it with people that really like it, and they can show you why they like it. And then you can kind of learn like how to do it correctly, right? So some people like wine. I'm not really into wine, but I'm sure if I went to dinner with a wine connoisseur, I would learn more about what they like about wine, right? So some people get into wine collections, right? They like to go on vacations centered around that. Going to Napa or going to Italy or France, right? Depending on what kind of type of wine you like, right? So people talk a lot about travel in retirement, which is we're gonna have more local stuff, which is staycations, right? Staying at your home, but doing fun local things. Going to moderate distances, just seeing a friend for a long weekend. And then a lot of folks want to do a good amount of international travel. Right. And then we just talk about, well, where would you like to go, and list it. right? And then prioritize it. It's very important. I push this a lot with clients. Do difficult travel early in retirement. So if you always want to go to the Himalayas or something, or go to countries that are harder to travel in, and are very interesting to you, don't just pick a hard country for the sake of it being difficult, but do it while you're healthy, because later mobility issues, knee replacements, stuff like that comes up. Sorry to tell you, you need to get your tires changed a little bit. It's like car maintenance. You have clients that'll be like, hey, I've got to do the first knee and then do the second knee, do a hip, right? And that will definitely interfere and cut out, sometimes it cuts out entire travel seasons, parts of the world where you don't want to go when certain times of year because it's just too hot. But you're recovering from surgery during that time. So for me, it's important for clients to do stuff while you're really healthy. So that's just some examples of activities, right? And you can see it's a very flowing conversation. And what would you like it to be like, right? So this is much more open-ended, the first way of doing it is a little more step-by-step, mechanically oriented, and maybe assessing, how much energy is going toward this. Do I want to increase or decrease it, right? So that's an energy focus. This is more of daydreaming, almost like a daydream, where you're saying, okay, well, what could a good thing look like? And thinking through it and then exploring it. Okay. The T is for things. Any English majors out there would say, well, things is too inspecific, right? It's just, what is a thing? The reason why you say things is because everybody needs to own some things in order to do stuff, right? So you can say for the kid that there's grandkids and they may need hockey gear, right? So you may, as a grandparent, might say, I'm going to buy the hockey gear for them. So these are the things that you're going to spend money on. Or for those of us that like to host, we're going to all right, I'm going to spend money on a pizza oven because it's a fun activity to bring people over, and you cook pizzas and you spend time cooking one pizza at a time. Everybody picks their toppings. It's a great time. That's a thing that we want to have. We want to have, if you want a pool at your house, let's say, that's one of the things you put in. It's like, hey, are there things that you've always wanted to have, or you would feel like be enhancing to those different facets of life, and you want to add those into your situation? So you might say, look, we want a home where we can host people and grandkids can stay over during the summer, let's say, right? So then I'll often ask very specific details about homes, because home maintenance as well as home location are two huge drivers of expenditures in retirement. So I'll ask a lot of specific questions. Well, what size, right? How big of a house do you want? Because that affects your utilities. And also renovation costs. The bigger your house is, the more square footage of carpet or hardwood floors or tiles. Also the type of house and kind of what grade is it? Is it like, do you want to live in almost like a starter home where it's very small and you got one extra bedroom maybe because that's all you need, right? Or are we going to live in a neighborhood where the houses are all of a certain standard, and if you want to maintain the value of that, you have to constantly do really nice landscaping, and that increases costs. So I'm asking a lot of open-ended questions about the house specifically, which may seem odd. You're like, oh, what does my planner need to know about my gardening? Because when clients get really big gardening bills and we have to pull money from their portfolio to cover it, it's something that we really want to hear and know ahead of time that, hey, we have a drainage problem in our backyard and we need to have the runoff go here, and that way we can have the patio not get flooded out, right? Or something like that. Or we want to put a cover so that way over the patio, so that way we can entertain more. So you can start to see we're going to start to have people that we want to entertain, right? That's the people. Who do you want to invite over? You want to entertain them. And the thing you need is going to be a cover for the patio. So these things all link together and they all end up costing money. And that's why, as a planner, we talk about them. And lastly, we're going to talk about health. There's an L in there, right? H-E-A-L-T-H. There we go. So talk about health and what makes people healthy in retirement. So everybody have their own ideas about what is healthy, but I like to use the S's, right? So we're going to say we need sunlight. Some people, particularly in the Northeast here and sometimes in the Pacific Northwest, it gets very cloudy certain times of year, and it can really affect people's mood. So getting appropriate sun exposure is really important. I say it's about 20 minutes a day in the sun, and making sure that you're outside during times of day when the sun's out, and making a concerted effort on that. That's a huge issue for mental health in retirement. We have sustenance, which is what's your diet like, right? What are you eating? So food and water, right? You got to stay hydrated. A lot of people are in a state of dehydration or on the edge of it a lot. Some people go overboard with this and say you need to drink water constantly. Talk to your doctor, but a lot of us could just afford to drink another glass or two per day. You don't have to be constantly drinking. I think the most medical guidelines today, and I'm sure as soon as we publish this podcast, they'll come out with something else, but it's if you're thirsty, drink water, and then maybe drink one more throughout the day. And don't have it solely be through coffee, right? I will put caffeine intake and alcohol, right? Those are the two most commonly used drugs, I guess you could say, all right, as the people drink wine or they enjoy beer and drinking. It can be really problematic when people first retire, is if you don't know what to do with your time, you're like, oh, I'll have a drink in the middle of the day, which can be fine, but you have to just be careful about alcohol use, particularly in times of transition when there's stress, because we may start to use it as a bit of a crutch. Instead of saying, hey, I don't have any social circles, you're like, well, I'm going to get a little inebriated and I'll suppress my feelings of loneliness, right? So we don't want to use it as as that kind of a negative coping strategy. Some people find that drinking alcohol together is a community event, and that's still important. I'll let you and your doctor decide whether you should engage in alcohol. And a lot of people drink way too much caffeine, and that goes to sleep, right? Sleep hygiene is crucial in retirement, and your body will change your sleep patterns as you age and become very disconcerting for people. Then it gradually gets worse and worse and worse. It may not be worse, it may just be different. And adapting to those new differences is really important. One of the issues with caffeine use is I feel tired, so I drink caffeine, and then I end up drinking it too late in the day. Caffeine has a half-life that's a little longer than people anticipate. And they'll say, well, the caffeine doesn't affect me. It doesn't. I drink a cup of coffee, then I can fall right asleep. The problem is you may not stay asleep. And then you're like, I don't know why I'm waking up at 2 a.m. It may be one of the contributing factors. There's some very good podcasts by doctors that specialize in sleep that talk about caffeine use and when you should stop drinking caffeine throughout the day, how much is probably healthy, when are ideal times of day to drink caffeine. And that way it won't affect sleep so much, because if we don't have enough sleep, it really affects what we can do with activities. If we are too irritable to be around other people, right, or too tired. So sleep is really crucial. All right, so we had sun, sustenance, sleep, and then we got to talk about exercise, which is sweat. You got to sweat some and get some activity. There are a lot of studies that just going to the gym once a day is not always, and then being sedentary the rest of the day isn't particularly good for you, even if you're getting a great workout once. That's better than nothing. They're finding that constant motion throughout the day and inserting motion throughout the day, like short walks, as well as having concerted workout time to build strength, is really important. So we have to get physical activity, particularly some cardio, in heart rate zone 2. If you want to Google what that means, you need to go at least into that usually, and then maybe do some intervals that get your heart rate at a higher rate within the safety of what your doctor says you can do, right? So we got to get some sweat, get some motion in there throughout the day, not just, well, I work out 3 days a week. We probably want to maybe work out 3 days a week and then do strength training, right? Strength training is very important. As we age, we lose muscle mass. So maintaining muscle mass so that we don't injure ourselves when we pick up grandkids, or we're like cooking for a family and we got to get the turkey out of the oven and our back gets cramped up and we throw our back out for 2 weeks because we lifted the turkey wrong, right? That's where strength training, learning to lift things with proper body mechanics is really important. So that's it. really serves a lot of functions to work out, not just to maintain strength and cardiovascular health, but also proper body mechanics is really important for staying active as long as possible. And then we have social interaction. I can't stress enough the social interaction. And you see it's in community and people above, but it's also in the health, because without social interaction, humans don't do well. Even if you think you do better without people, if you don't do well with people, then maybe you need to talk to somebody that can help you be a better friend or be better in community based on how you interact with people. So hope that's not too harsh, but sometimes if we don't get along well with others, it would behoove us to learn how to get along with others and find social connection to be recharging. What makes it discharging for you, right? Where it's like, I just don't get anything out of it. It's draining to me. Well, maybe we need to find the right types of friends who are recharging or that you enjoy spending time with. So this is another way of doing the looking at, okay, how are we going to balance time and energy expenditure in retirement? So we look at our path, right? People, activity, things, and health, and just talk through this with a person, and you can write down ideas too. And then we'll address later in the book how you can start to integrate this into a schedule for yourself, potentially. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and talk to you again. I think it's really important, like I said, to do this in community with someone. If you do this in a vacuum, just with yourself, it's probably better than doing nothing, right? They say an unexamined life can be a difficult life. Some people will go as far as saying an unexamined life is not worth living. Probably a little extreme in my view, but you can have an enhanced life if you take the time to examine it. Those of us who tend to be a little more thinking oriented can sometimes think too much and not act enough, right? So that's why I'd say involving other people in those actions is good. And also people can then follow up, and it creates some accountability without an extreme level of structure to it. Like, oh, did you work out 5 times this week? What are you doing for social interaction today? That's probably a little overkill. Instead, you say, oh, my family, with friends, you'd say, oh, I'm going to try to join this golf club thing to see what people like about it and get some more social interaction. Your friends might say, hey, I'll do that with you. Or they may follow up next time you see them and say, hey, what are you doing with golf? Because you introduce the concept of what you're trying to work on in retirement, what you'd like it to look like, your friends may be curious, and people that care about you would ask, like, hey, are you doing that? And it's not as guilt-based accountability where you're saying, well, you're bad because you didn't join the golf club like you said you were going to. Instead, you say, oh, what's going on with that? What were the obstacles to it? And you can ask more questions around and be curious about what were barriers to doing it, and a little less about, oh, I'm guilty because I didn't do it. That guilt can be a reasonably good motivator. However, it tends to have to taint the fun of things, right? So if you only go to the gym because you're guilty that you ate cheesecake, if you don't eat cheesecake, you won't go to the gym, and then you might just feel too bad and just keep eating the cheesecake anyway, right? I know sometimes I'm inclined to do that. So I think if you move a little bit away from guilt and a little more towards the positive outcomes and also the positive experience of doing the behavior, you can find a little more consistency, because sometimes we find that retirement is about changing or developing new habits and new schedules, which are very difficult. A really good book on this is Atomic Habits. They talk about how do we develop habits, how do we stick to them, what tends to degrade our ability to stick with certain things, particularly things that are in our own best interest. And we may even enjoy doing, we just magically don't find the time to do it because we'll be scrolling on our phones or watch a little too much TV and we realize the day's gone and I didn't really do a whole lot of motion today. Do that for a couple of days in a row and you'll start to feel usually degradation in mood or energy level. So these are the kinds of things that we think about, is bring it into community, and that way it can help you consistently do this throughout retirement. And we can worry a little bit less about what am I going to do with myself, and say, oh, okay, you have some empowerment and know that you have agency, and you can know I can choose what I do in retirement. It isn't all doctor's appointments and home renovations and like another list of chores, or it's not endless sitting on the beach. It's some mix of what a full life with lots of different facets working together and reflecting light off each other, right? To use a diamond analogy. That is what retirement is. And sometimes we got to learn to polish those facets to make it a more brilliant experience for us. So I hope you find this helpful and look forward to talking to you on the next episode.